All right, guys, welcome in, welcome back. How y'all doing? So I'm going to speak a little bit louder, make sure we can incorporate the recording portion here. That way, if any of our brethren, you can come in, John. Anybody wants to listen to this, it's completely free. Anybody that works here or don't work here, I don't really care. I think it was Picasso that said, find what your gift is and you give it away. Not this is a gift, it could be totally wrong. But my goal here is to facilitate a weapon against National Registry. My co-instructor for this course is Larry Vandergrift. He's been a National Registry rep. He shared with me some information that Registry bases its budget off of every student taking the National Registry at least twice. They believe that they're going to at least get you one time with it. My goal is to give them a big bird finger and be like, nah, you're not getting my money twice. One and done, son. However, they do present a very daunting, challenging computer adaptive test that even if you are a strong EMT candidate, you can go in there and still make mistakes and still not do very well on it. Based on how you do, it is computer adaptive. It's like a shark in the water. If it smells blood and that blood is somewhere around the airway region, it's going to hammer you with those questions until it's 100%, 95% sure that you're going to be able to handle that type of workload. It's not trying to fail you. Contrary to popular belief, registry is not trying to fail you, but it is trying to see, can you operate as a functional EMT? Can you not kill anybody? As your instructor, I want that too. I want to just release people that are going to do well and not kill anybody. There are some things I will say the streets can only teach you. We spoke about it earlier that there's the book says a perfect patient takedown is 5 people. I ain't never had 5 people in my life help me take down a psych patient. It's never happened for me unless when PD shows up and then another crew show up, then I got people. But initially, no, ain't really a thing. I worked hard on this PowerPoint. I wrote a lot of it, stole some of it from like I see something interesting on Instagram, I'd find it, take it, and put it in a usable format. And I also bought a couple registry preps and, took the fat out of them and put them in a, format where I could deliver it. So inspiration for me. I don't know what caused you to want to be an EMT or a paramedic or an EMS provider, but I remember being in like 6th or 7th grade when 9/11 happened. I remember being very, very affected by it. And just like everybody was, the whole nation, it just, as a preteen, I was stirred up inside with just this emotion that I couldn't understand. Growing up, I wanted to be Superman or the Incredible Hulk. And since there's no radioactive spider to bite me and gamma rays will actually kill you in real life, I decided to do what I could to serve my community. So Todd Beamer, was one of the passengers on Flight 93. I've heard those audio tapes. If that don't stir you up, the spoon is done fell out of your bowl.
I just recently went to the memorial.
Pretty powerful stuff, huh? Can you mute your mic, whoever's on the line? Mute your mic for me, please. So you went to the Pennsylvania Memorial. It'll stir you up, tick you off, piss you off, and instead of letting it upset you, though, let it drive you to remember the firefighters, paramedics, EMTs, police officers, all these guys that flew in on 9/11. 9/11 taught us a lot. 9/11 taught us what to do, what not to do, what we should be prepared for. Actually, I'm taking a Homeland Security class right now. You know what I've learned? That field is so adaptive and so changing that no U.S. intelligence agency can keep up with it, and that we are wide open for cyber attack. Scary stuff to think about. But I also think about people that are selfless, like Todd Beamer here. Listen to that audio recording. You hear him say, he knew he was going to die. He knew it was going to happen. Are you ready, guys? Let's roll. Let's roll. You are entering in a field where you could actually be put in harm's way. But that doesn't mean that we stop going towards it. That doesn't mean that we don't respond and react. We signed up for this type of job to make a difference. So we're asking you to remember that and remember the people before you, that as everybody else runs from a burning building, you're running into a burning building. There's an active shooter that everybody's running away from, you're running to it. Not to get hurt, I'm not talking about freelance in here. I'm talking about to respond to a threat and do your job and your capacity. Police have their job, fire has their job, EMS has our job. Treatment, triage, transport of these patients. So let's talk about this bastard here. NREMT is an adaptive computer exam. It will tailor its questions based on your performance. How well you do is how well it gives you. Once this thing is 95% confident, and I got this from National Register, I didn't make it up, I didn't type it. I copied and pasted it on a PowerPoint slide. This is the facts. Once that exam is 95% confident, for you to work as an EMT or 95% confident that you cannot reach competency, it will shut off. So here's the good news. As long as the test is still going, there's a chance. It's like that Dumb and Dumber movie. He's saying there's a chance. There's a chance. EMT's cognitive, adaptive. You will have at least 70 questions. 120 is the max. You have live questions, 60 to 110. There's going to be 10 pilot questions that mean nothing. They are all for data analysis. All for data analysis. The maximum time you're given is 2 hours. This is a time test. You need to be cognitively aware of your time, because you can time out. If you time out, you automatically fail. Less than 1% of people time out. I've never had a student time out. Until this year, my Atlanta Fire Paramedic class had 3 time out. I don't know what they were doing, but they timed out, and that brought my initial pass rate down. So I'm waiting on them 3. Everybody else has passed the written. All the other 9. These 3 that timed out now have to take it. So now I'm on high alert for nobody else ever timing out again. Sometimes the lessons are hard learned, but I will definitely be timing every quiz and test I give from now on. But I had warned them it was a time test. They have to take the initiative and watch the time. We talked about the pilot questions there. There's also a calculator. I'm not sure that the EMT B will require you to do any kind of calculations. You're not really given drug dosages that are complicated beyond a few of the ones that you can give. I want you to know that pediatrics is 15% of every category. You're going to see peds on this, and as I have vocalized and vocalized and vocalized, we are weak in peds when it comes to EMS. I've ran pediatric arrests. I am in no way an expert. I was scared as hell, and I always will be. It's kind of like riding a motorcycle. You have to respect it, or it will kill you. Same thing riding a horse. Respect the horse or it'll throw you. Always be vigilant and ready. So pediatrics is a weak area for us. I would definitely say to study up on that. By the numbers, again, I didn't type this. I pulled it right off of National Registry's website. These are the areas you'll be tested on. You will not get a 60, a 70, or an 80 on the test. You will get a pass or not. Above passing, below passing, near passing, something like that. It will tell you your weak areas. Airway, respiration, ventilation is going to make 18 to 22% of this bad boy. More if you suck at it. Cardiology is a big area, 20 to 24%. Trauma, 14 to 18. We've got medical obstetrics and gynecology running in at 27 to 31%. EMS operations is 10 to 14%. I will tell you now, EMS operations is often overlooked. People will fail this thing, and then the only section they fail is operations. There's a right order of doing things, and registry is big on you knowing that order. So make sure you do not neglect your operations area. In this lecture PowerPoint, I have a whole section dedicated to operations. The stuff that we talked about in the beginning of the book that we have not really talked about since. Legal stuff, documentation stuff. What kind of radio do we use? that kind of stuff. The devil is in the details at this point now. It's not going to always ask you about how to actually treat a patient. It'll ask you why you're treating the patient or the pathophysiology of the disease process. Larry will tell you this story, but he had an EMT B student a few years ago, exceptionally bright. I think he already finished med school at this point, because a lot of these guys that finish some of these programs that want to go to PA or med school or something like that, they need clinical contact hours. So a lot of them become an EMT, go work at Grady or work here or work somewhere and get those hours in so they can get fast track to med school. Happens all the time. Not a big deal. We enjoy having them while we do. A lot of them are gifts to us while we have them. And then they are, after their years with us, they remember EMS fondly and they lobby for us to have higher wages and better hours and things like that. You can always tell an EMS doctor that was a former paramedic by the way they treat paramedics and their understanding of what we do. So do not neglect the operations portion here. Med term. I had a student come and talk to my Atlanta Fire paramedic class today. He just passed his registry last week. You know what I was teaching today? Medical terminology, all day, every day. You know what I was teaching? Med terminology. And you know what he told them? If your medical terminology is weak, you will fail. You know why I told him that? I told him that. You know, he made sure that he had squared away his way of breaking down words. Prefixes, suffixes, and root words. You're going to encounter 4-foot-long words on this test. Every couple of years, you're having a choice to keep your National Registry license. You either submit hours saying you've done the continuing education to stay an EMT or a paramedic, or you challenge the test. I've challenged it 4 times. Last time I did was in 2020 of April. I teach med terminology at a college. I teach it a couple times a year to EMT and paramedic classes. I want you to hear me now. Every time I've taken this test, I've seen words I did not know. I teach med terminology at a college. I want this to sink in. I teach med terminology at a college. There's words on there I don't know every time I take it. The example I had last time was CAPE cyanosis. I know what cyanosis is. That's turning blue somewhere, right? Because of a lack of oxygen. Unoxygenated blood is blue. Oxygenated blood is red. I never heard the term CAPE cyanosis. So I thought and did a process of elimination and I broke it down. Only one of these answers is even remotely close to what it could be. I'm thinking of an actual CAPE. And they was talking about a pulmonary embolism and that little blind that'll form around the patient. That's the only way I was able to figure it out. Sometimes I would see a word and I only knew like one of the things that it actually meant. The last word is itis, so I know it means inflammation. All the rest of these have nothing to do with inflammation, so it's got to be this one. There's a method to this, a process of elimination, and a way of breaking down the words, making sure you know as many prefixes, suffixes, and root words as possible. At least the most common ones is critical. And if you want, I can give you an entire medical terminology PowerPoint that I teach at Atlanta Fire. I think I gave it to them as well. You can have it again if you want, John. Whatever it takes. I would definitely know as many of these prefixes, suffixes, and root words as possible. Memory dump sheet. This is optional for you. This is an example of one that Master Your Medics does. I saw this on Instagram, so I was like, oh, screenshot, mine now. I definitely want to support this guy. I've talked to Jeff a little bit. He's a flight medic from up the north somewhere. Very smart guy, got a great organization. This was a sheet that he gave away for free. If you look on his website, you can pull this off of there. I put it on here to give you an example of what one looks like, not that you have to copy this one exactly. So when you start your cognitive written exam, you get a blank sheet of paper. And a lot of students will do a dump sheet. They will dump all the things like rule of nines, the GCS, there's test strategy, oxygen cylinder ranks, and then that's pediatric vital signs. Now, me as a person, if I'm a test taker, if I can remember all this shit to put on a, piece of paper, I don't really need the piece of paper. But some people are more visual. It might help them. Or once the test gets going, if they get, I guess their nerves get to them, this might be helpful to them. Again, this PowerPoint's available to you, free to you. So if it helps you, great. Click the slide and learn how to make it yourself. If not, it's all good. Let's talk about it. Testing strategy is the key here. At this point, you have covered all the material that will be on the National Registry test. You have covered all the material needed to be successful. Between myself and Larry, we have given you not only what the book says, but I have tried to go beyond the book and give you what the streets want you to know. And what my experience has taught me. I hope you'll have the wisdom to listen. Experience taught me that I touch a hot stove, it burned me. Your wisdom is what? Seeing I touch the hot stove and not having to do it yourself. At this point, you should have a test prep app. There are free ones, but you get what you pay for. You get what you pay for. The better ones do cost money, but at this point, constant repetition of information, algorithms will help you retain the information. The key is repetition. The key is repetition. You should not be playing on Facebook for the next 3 to 4 weeks. You should not be Snapchatting your boob. No more Instagram. You do what you want. I'm just giving you suggestions. If you want to pass this, you'll make it your magnificent obsession for the next couple of weeks so you can knock this test out. Distractions are the enemy. I call this, I'm not sure exactly what it's called. I call it your spatial time or the free time. Let's say you're on an ambulance right now, like tomorrow you work on shift. That time where you're posted somewhere and you're playing on Facebook and blah, 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 you know what you should be doing? Probably test prep apps. If you're not eating, sleeping, working, you need to be studying. That's my recommendation, at least for the next couple of weeks. Unless you want to have to pay to do this thing again, which I don't think anybody wants to, but it's put to your choice. I'm only here to offer advice, facilitate. So, rules. Read every question twice. Why? Because it can have a trick in there. All the following except, well, like that one we found on the final tonight. Don't say it out loud, there's people listening. But you know that one exactly. It was that one that was the opposite of the other three. There's also, again, since it's timed, you need to find those recall questions. If you can answer a question immediately, and it's like a recall question, which means it's a question you ain't got to figure out. There's no scenario. How many bones are in the body? 206. Okay, bang. I just bought time back. You have a time limit. Please do not time out or it just screws any chance up of you passing. Next thing, you want to eliminate the 2 wrong answers. For much of these quizzes and tests, you can probably guess and watch and see A, B, C, D. 2 of them are complete bull crap, right? 2 of them are not even on the radar. If you can eliminate 2 of them immediately, guess what happens? Because you know nothing about it, you've dropped yourself to a 50% chance of guessing. Give yourself the guess power if you know nothing else about it. Decide between the remaining 2 and which one is more patient-centered, more correct. Again, registry's showing you and pretending like it's a perfect world. So choose the one that would be the most ideal. A lot of them are scenario-based. They're relatively tight. They have minimum information. But here's the good thing about a written test. A lot of you that overthink, you stop overthinking. They're only going to test you over what is written right there. But what if, you're going to what if yourself right out of a passing grade. Go with your gut and your first answer that comes to you. That's another rule. But another thing is what? Don't overthink it. Go with what is in the question. And read the question well. How many times? 2 times. Many questions end in you should or you should next. Always look for never or what can you do? What's the best treatment? Not always what the EMT can do. Do what is best for your patient. That is the first rule of medicine. Be a patient advocate. Next, you need to look for signs of criticality. Registry's trying to see, can you respond to their buzzwords? Buzzwords such as pale, cool, clammy trigger what, John? Shock. Immediately he thinks shock because that's what I trained him to think of. When I say shallow breathing, he thinks inadequate respiration. So your response to treat it is a BVM. Very good. Thank you for making my point. The reason that is because they want you to respond to that rather quickly and to be responsive to that. I like it. So choose the best answer that reflects urgency as opposed to your time. Like we said earlier, we had that question about that patient with that thing on his head. And I'm trying to be slick with this because I got people that ain't taking the final yet. But basically it came down to if I don't act upon his airway first and foremost before I did that other thing, he was going to become hypoxic and suffer brain damage and die, right? So people don't suffer brain damage and die because you can't, let's say, put a C-collar on or take a helmet off or cut clothes. They would do that because you didn't bag them and get a BVM on them quick enough. Look for those signs of criticality. Those airway questions are an SOB. NRMT wants you to know this and asks about it a lot. They want you to know airway very well. At the end of the day, I would put a good street medic up against a respiratory therapist any day. You got your well-lit, beautiful little ER. I'm out here in the street and stooping down and pee to put this tube in. I'd put you up against them any day. Any ERMT wants you to know airway because it's kind of our bread and butter. If I told you guys before, if you're gonna be good at anything, be good at airway, respirations, and cardiology. That is our bread and butter. ACLS protocols and CPR, that is the EMS bread and butter. So make sure that you're knowing how to respond to these airway problems and these respiratory failure problems. Which gun are you gonna shoot? Does this problem need a BVM? Does it need, oxygenation or ventilation? Does it need a cannula, a non-rebreather, the BVM? The questions will give you all the clues you need. Patient sat 94%. They feel a bit winded. They have adequate chest rise and fall. What am I thinking? A nasal cannula will do. You can fix a person with a nasal cannula. This patient has COPD. They walked across the yard, and probably sitting them up high and let them sit for a while. The nasal cannula will square them away. Patient suddenly has a respiratory rate of 5 and it's shallow. That's a ventilation problem. We need to bag them. There's a difference. Know which gun to shoot. I already kind of said this. Don't read into the questions. Do not read into the questions. Do not read into the questions. Just answer what is there, please. Here's a new thing that some of y'all have never thought of. I want you to learn how to read the last line of the question first. Find the question mark and read from there first. That is the actual question. A lot of the other stuff could actually be fluff. And if it's not fluff, I need to know what the question is actually asking first. So I want you to follow this strategy. Read the last line of the question first, and then go back and read all the 4 answers. Then read the paragraph. You know exactly what they're asking for, what the possible answers could be. It's going to be one of these. So if I already know what the possible answers could be, I can be more successful in navigating this scenario. Does that make sense? Take your time. Always be a patient advocate, but not too much time because it's timed. So keep it simple, stupid. I learned that in recruit school many moons ago, Sumter County, Georgia. I was trained with convicts. Not because I'm rowdy or anything, but because at the time, the Sumter County Fire Department was just becoming a fire department, and they were taking over the county's volunteer service. And those of us that were going to be part of the team of this new fire department, they didn't have enough staffing in all of Sumter County to cover it. So they made prisoners do it. I trained with prisoners, and that was the first thing they taught me, and old Shanky and old moonshine maker there, was that keep it simple, stupid. The test ain't trying to trick you. It's trying to see, are you going to kill people? Do not just pick the simplest answer because people say BLS for ALS. Have a reason for why you're making that choice. Why are you choosing this one over that one? Justify it to yourself. Justify it to yourself. All right, one brick at a time is how you build a house. One bite at a time is how you eat an elephant. These big insurmountable things can all be conquered with time and elbow grease. So don't look at this as an 80 to 150 question test or a 70 to 120 question test, because that's what the EMT is. I wrote this for the paramedic class, and some of it I told you, I just put it back over here. So, but don't look at it as a 70 to 120 question test. This is a 1 question test that you take 70 to 120 times. Treat every question like it is the 1 question that will make you an EMT or a paramedic. Pour yourself entirely into it. Treat it like if I get this 1 question right over and over and over, then I will be an EMT or a paramedic. That's the mindset you have to have. So treat it like that. Now, I do know what mental stamina is. And sometimes you're going to get tired and maybe a little frustrated. I want you to take a step. You'll be sitting in a chair taking this test. So I want you to just stop the test for a second. I mean, not push a button and stop it. Please don't do that. But just put your hands on the side of the keyboard. Lean back, take a deep breath, reset yourself, reset your mind, and then get back to work. You do that a couple times throughout the test, taking only like 3 to 5 seconds to do so. I promise you, a deep breath and a reset will get you back in order. You got to get your head in the right place before you go in. This is a pressure test because this is a pressure job. You know what's scary about a critical call? Let's say we have a pediatric arrest or something in front of us. You know what's scary about that? Besides the fact that it's a kid and that they can't breathe and their heart's not beating and you're responsible for every bit of this to fix it. You know what's even scarier? Not knowing what to do about it. That's even worse. Having that feeling of helplessness and unknown because you didn't train or listen or work hard enough to know it. So this is a pressure job. The right people have to be put in the right place to do it. You have to have the mindset to conquer this. Don't think you're going to be able to cram and make this happen. You should have been preparing for this from day one of us starting this journey. From day one, you had to start preparing. Your mindset had to be ready and willing to go. Let's roll, guys. You had to be ready from day one. Now, I ain't saying that some of y'all can't look up and cram these last couple of weeks and make this thing happen. You know, I've seen stranger things happen. But if you want to go in there and just crush this son of a gun, then you should have been preparing for day one. This is not going to be just the highlights of all the stuff we talked about. This is going to be the entirety of the breadth of the course in its entirety that they're going to be questioning you over. So don't go in there hoping for an easy test. Don't cram. I want you to go in there wanting a hard test. And I want you to destroy a hard test. You've put the effort in. Y'all have had countless hours of studying. You've listened to countless hours of lectures. You've wrote a lot of papers because I enjoy making you suffer. You've had study guides to do, lots of quizzes, labs to do. You guys from Savannah have driven for 4 hours to come up here and see us to do these labs, and I appreciate the living hell out you. I do. I know it ain't been easy. You have earned the right to sit for this test. You've earned the right to call yourself an EMT. This will be the last step in this journey, and you will enter into a new healthcare field, and you will have a new career that you can be proud of. You can be proud of this the rest of your life. No matter where you go and what you do beyond this, you can be a proud EMT that will serve your community. Your family will be proud of you, and people will look up to you. You'll be a community activist and a member of a very, very astute organization. So you've earned the right. Don't go in there wanting an easy test. Go in there and want something to challenge you and make you better. The night before, stop studying, relax, have a beer, smoke a doobie. I don't care. At this point, your cram session will not save you. Cramming and jamming ain't gonna save you at this point. You're gonna either know it or you don't. Smoke a doobie, spend time with your family or your dogs, and sit there and reflect on why you started the journey. Get ready and work it out. The day of the journey, the day of the test, wake up early. You know what I love about getting up at 5 a.m.? The world is mine. My wife and kids ain't up. Nobody hardly else up either. You get up and get a lot done before the rest of the world wakes up. I ain't telling you to wake up at 5 a.m., but get up earlier than you normally do. Do a workout. You can Google this right here if you want. Universal studies have shown that even a brisk walk 30 minutes before testing will cause you to score better. You'll score better, you'll reduce anxiety, and you will have a more optimal performance. That's because of blood flow going to the brain. Healthy breakfast that will fuel your brain and not your cravings. I can tell you one thing, if I'm hungry sitting in there, I ain't gonna care about the test. I'm gonna want to eat. That's just how I'm set up. You see how I look. Notice it. He's gonna eat. This guy's gonna eat if nothing else. So another thing is to be hydrated. I know this doesn't make like a lot of sense, but I'm trying to give you every little tip and adaptation that will work. There are studies that show the better hydrated you are, the better flow your blood has in your brain. because of the reduced viscosity that it has. So more blood flow means a more optimal functioning brain. Every little advantage I can give you tonight, I'm going to give to you. Optimal blood flow is the key. So again, I'll remind you, there are two ways to get a question right. One is just to know the answer because you studied it. The other is, I know these three are not it. And that's okay. You know what Ric Flair said, right? Besides, woo, he said, winning by an inch or winning by a mile, winning is winning. So let's talk about cells. I think I told y'all like night one, I don't expect you to understand microscopic anatomy at the EMT B level, but gross anatomy, that's very obtainable and very important for you to know. So the cells are the building blocks of the human body. Your body's composed of millions and millions of cells. They work together to maintain that homeostasis, that balance of the system. Each cell has a nucleus, cell membrane, and cytoplasm in it. Without getting too complicated, the nucleus contains that DNA. That DNA decides what that cell is going to be. If it has skin cell DNA, it will be a skin cell. If it has heart cell DNA, it will be a myocardial cell. You see where I'm going with this? Each cell requires three things: water, oxygen, and glucose for it to perform glycolysis in the respiratory cycle, cellular respiration, to produce energy. These cells must produce energy. The anatomy of the brain, just a quick cover. The cerebrum is the actual brain itself. When you think brain, you probably think of the cerebrum. That's what everybody pictures when they see Hannibal Lecter like pulling off somebody's brain lobe and eating it. Fava beans. Delicious. Each lobe has a job. Each lobe has a job. Temporal lobe over there by the temple is responsible for speech, hearing, and memory. Occipital lobes in the back of your head, it's responsible for vision. Think about having eyes in the back of your head. That's because that's where your vision is located. Frontal lobe is your personality or lack thereof of having one, and your motor functions. And of course, the parietal lobes is your sensory. The cerebellum, also known as the athlete's brain, is for balance and coordination. So the brain receives 20% of the body's total blood flow per minute. 20% of the body's blood flow per minute. An interruption of blood flow to the brain of even 10 seconds will cause you to become collapsed. You will pass out. You will pass out. The brain cannot have any interruption of blood flow. If it does, you will pass out. The brain cannot go without having glucose. 25% of your body's glucose goes to the brain. It needs oxygen and glucose. Blood supply to the brain is supplied by the carotids, the vertebral-basilar, and the circle of Willis. Circle of Willis. Other parts of the brain that we could talk about are the diencephalon, the inner brain, mesencephalon, the midbrain. We're talking about the brain stem here. We live and die in the brain stem. Pons, medulla oblongata. These guys control respirations, blood pressure, heart rate. And of course, that medulla oblongata, through the use of the chemoreceptors, will do what? Measure the pH in the brain and also measure the CO2. When that CO2 rises, that means the pH of the body is going down. It stimulates you to breathe. The chemoreceptors and the medulla are the way you are breathing. So medulla oblongata controls the respiratory center, cardiac activity, vasomotor. Cerebellum, of course, is that athlete's brain. That's your fine motor movements or lack thereof. Some of us are not that coordinated. The spine, oh yeah. Spinal cord is protected by vertebral discs. Your bones are meant to be vital organ armor. That's right, you're a meat mech. Meat mech. They are covered in nerve roots and they have vertebral bodies. Cervical spine, there are 7 cervical vertebrae, 12 thoracic. How many lumbar are there? 5.
What? No, there's 6. Okay. Oh, no, there's 5. There's 5 lumbar, 5 sacral, and 4 coccygeal.
Let me give you a hand. We eat
Yes.
breakfast at 7. We eat lunch at 12.
Dinner's 5.
Dinner at 5.
Dessert 5.
Dessert at 5. And then we have 4 margaritas to end the night. So there are 7 cervical vertebrae. There are 12 thoracic vertebrae. There are 5 lumbar, 5 sacrum, and there are 4 coccygeal fused vertebrae. Remember, breakfast at 7, lunch at 12, dinner at 5, dessert at 5. I'm gonna have me 4 margaritas to end the night. Damn, that sounds good. What time we leaving? That Mexican place still open in there? Probably. Moving on. Important structures. The cranium is rigid, fixed in place. The foramen magnum, largest opening. That is the opening at the base of the skull where the spinal cord exits. This is the site of brainstem herniation. Increase in the cranial pressure will eventually turn to brain herniation, where the brain is trying to be forced through that tiny hole. You'll notice the patient start to posture about that time. We got decorticate towards the cord, decerebral away from the cord. Decorticate towards the cord, decerebral away from the cord. That will occur. Brain's protected by the meninges. Think of them as padding the brain. Their main job is to pad the brain. So pia mater is the innermost layer. Pia, arachnoid, dura mater. Pia, arachnoid, dura mater. Pad the brain. Dura mater is the outermost, most durable, dura mater, durable layer on the outside. So autoregulation exists in there. It changes the ICP and result to compensation. That's one of the first things that will occur if a patient has a head injury and there's bleeding in the brain, is that autoregulation of blood pressure will spike the BP. And this is where we see that Cushing's response, where the blood pressure goes up, widening the pulse pressure. We have irregular respirations and bradycardia occurring. Cushing's response. Oh, them guts. Gastroenterology, just a quick look. Esophagus, that's right. 10 inches in length. Straight but collapsible tube, passes food from the mouth to the stomach, and it has the operation of peristalsis, which is that rhythmic movement that's always moving to squish food through it. Liver, located in right upper quadrant, largest internal organ of the body, weighs about 3 pounds. Storage of glucose, protein synthesis, and filters blood waste. Kidneys look like beans, or do beans look like kidneys? I'm not sure. Who thought of this? So smooth bean-shaped organs lie on each side of the vertebral column. They help maintain homeostasis by what? Filtering of blood and fluid volume. That helps a lot to do with your blood pressure. Spleen, located in left upper quadrant, very vascular, helps fight infection. Its spleen is actually a part of the lymphatic system, and it holds the reserve of blood. When all red blood cells go to die is the spleen graveyard. You can live without a spleen, but an acute splenic injury can kill you because the amount of blood it holds, you can be hypovolemic very quick. Pancreas has a lot to do with our diabetic patients. Makes insulin with beta cells, glucagon, alpha cells, and somatostatin for the delta cells. Stomach, J-shaped little pouch, can capacity of 1 liter, but I myself have defied those odds a few times. I guess in a perfect world, it was 1 liter. Shoot. We just said all that about the liver. This is also part of your study guide. If you want to just more in-depth look, I'm just throwing it out there at this point. All right, endocrine anatomy. Thyroid has 2 lobes, it's butterfly shaped, located in the neck, anterior and inferior to the larynx. Produces lots of hormones, thyroxine, triiodothyronine, and calcitonin. Each of these is very important. The main thing you need to remember about your thyroid is that it has a lot to do with your metabolism. Those people that actually have low thyroid hormone production, they are big. No matter how much they diet, how much they exercise, they're just big. They have low metabolism, so the rate at which they burn calories is low. The exact opposite is true for the patients with what? High thyroid output. They got too much thyroid hormone. They're skinny as a rail no matter how much they eat, and they have a very fast metabolism. So parathyroid is four small glands located on the posterior lateral surfaces. It secretes parathyroid hormone, which increases blood calcium. Calcium is important for muscle contractions, but also for cardiac function. If we discuss the sodium potassium pump, we'll talk about how the electrical system of the heart relies on calcium for its contractility. So thymus, mediastinum, located behind the sternum during childhood, it secretes thymosin for the maturation of the T lymphocytes responsible for cell-mediated immunity. Usually disappears after childhood. Then we got that pancreas. We've already talked about him, what he's doing. I would suggest knowing these terms like glyconeogenesis or glycogenolysis, which is the breakdown of glucagon and stimulates the breakdown of glycogen, and then gluconeogenesis, break the word down, glucose, sugar, neo, new, genesis, in the beginning, or creation, new glucose from non-sugar sources. So let's get into it. Patient assessment. Patient assessment. Forming a sample history is very important. Why? If I'm going to assess a patient, I need to know what they got going on, because if I don't, I could make things worse by drugs I give. Quick example, patient having chest pain, old, well-dressed man, young, nice-looking lady. He's having chest pain. So my man, have you been taking any kind of erectile dysfunction medication? No, I ain't done none of that. Never. Never. I'm gonna tell you something about men. Death before dishonor. We'll never admit this. A pro tip is to separate him from said young lady. Hey, brother, if I give you this medication, it will kill you if you've taken this. He'll whisper to you softly. Yeah, I did it. Don't tell her. I wouldn't do you that way, fam. Death before dishonor. But it's important for me to dig into their history and what they got going on before I start throwing drugs around. As thorough a history as you can get, the more appreciative the ER will be and the more understanding of your patient and their present condition you will have. Because we base treatment off of our assessment. I don't do things prophylactically. As a paramedic, I can do a needle chest thoracotomy by stabbing you in the chest and relieving air for a tension pneumothorax. But I don't just do it all willy-nilly just in case you might have one. You have to have signs and symptoms and mechanism of injury that indicate that you do have one. Otherwise, I'm just stabbing you for the fun of it. But that's a whole nother lecture. So we got sample, signs and symptoms, allergies, medications, past medical history, last oral intake, and the events that led up to the emergency. We sure love our mnemonics here in EMS, but they are helpful for remembering this. OPQRST does not apply to all patients, obviously, like a medical patient may not apply to them if they're not in pain. It may not apply to them if they're not in pain. And of course, we've got AVPU. Alert, meaning they're addressing you as you walk in the room. Their eyes are tracking you. Verbal, only notices when you speak to them. Painful, they need a painful response, like an elbow drop, or the stone cold stunner, or the last ride, like Undertaker used to give, or just the sternum rub. You pick, but only one will keep you out of jail. Pick wisely. And of course, you've got unresponsive, which means they ain't doing much of nothing. And unresponsive means that we're running straight to airway, breathing, circulation, look, listen, and feel, looking for chest rise, listening for breath sounds, checking for a pulse. Because if the patient doesn't have a pulse, this whole algorithm changes from ABC to CAB. The scene size up. Gradations 1-9. If the scene is not safe, thou shalt dippeth out. Amen and amen. This is something I learned at Grady EMS in Atlanta. That's why I call it Gradations 1-9. If it ain't safe, you get out of there, drop everything and run. Cut bait. I remind you, you're not a police officer. Most of you will have no type of training or weaponry to protect yourself. And we're not in this business to hurt people. So if you can run, do it. The only time you would ever get physical is if you are trapped and have no other alternative. So if the scene's unsafe, get on out of there. ABC. It's easy as. Thank you. I'm here all night. If the patient has a pulse and shows signs of life, go ABC. If the patient is lifeless and appears dead, skip everything and go to a pulse check. If they're unresponsive, go to a pulse check. I shouldn't have to say that, but I do. Make sure there's a pulse. Oh, yeah. I was ahead of myself. Airway, check to see if it is open. If not, manually open the thing. Insert an OPA or an MPA. Suction if there is gurgling. Snoring is treated with what? Head tilt, chin lift if there is no trauma. Modified jaw thrust if there is suspected trauma. If you find a patient just laying flat out, assume there's been trauma because you don't know. If he just passed out and fell over, that could still be trauma. He probably hit his head when he fell. I don't know many people that just pass out and like, oh no, and catch themselves all gentle like. So breathing, are they breathing? Is it good enough? Make sure you're giving enough O2 to patients in respiratory distress. Everybody gets something. I would say for your national registry purposes, especially on the psychomotor portion, when you hit that A in that breathing portion, at least throw a cannula on them. But if you find that they're not breathing adequately and they've got inadequate respirations, you're going to need to bag them. Let's talk about it. Respiratory distress is indicated by stridor, which is a high-pitched whistling or crowing sound indicating a partial airway obstruction. Wheezing, agitation, tachypnea, nasal flaring. Assist ventilations with patients who are not breathing adequately. Altered mental status, shallow respirations or respirations over 30 or under 10. Over 30, under 10. If they're breathing over 30 times a minute, you're going to try and bag them. If they say no, okay. If you got fight in you, then that's great. Slow your breathing down for me. Check their rate, rhythm, and quality. When you're checking breathing, you're checking rate, rhythm, quality of the breathing. What is their rate? What is their rhythm? What is the quality? Is it normal? Is it too deep? Is it shallow? What is going on? Circulation. Do they even have a pulse? If not, CPR. Is there any bleeding? If so, stop the bleeding immediately. Bleeding would be more important than even airway. When you're doing general impression, you should be looking for obvious life threats and generalized bleeding. Why? Let's say you got a femoral artery bleeding out right there and you see that during the general impression. What will kill the patient first? The femoral artery bleeding out within a minute and a half or 2 minutes, or the 3 to 5 minutes of the oxygenation problem they got? Artery will get you. So stop bleeding before you do any ABC stuff. That's the one thing that takes precedence over airway, is a bleeding issue that could kill them. Everybody with me? Feeling me? Cool. Oh, sorry, we're recording this one. That's for y'all to look at later. Y'all going to hell.
That's funny.
This is me on my third rise teaching EMTs to be EMTs. All right, so we've made it through the first portion of my National Registry Prep. We've talked about what the test is. We've talked about what to expect, how to prepare for it, how to answer questions, how to have a strategy for it, and also that primary assessment. Scene survey, primary assessment. You should know that like the back of your hand. Some of the questions they'll give you will put you right in the middle of that scene survey, primary assessment. Always remember that it's ABC, then transport decision. As soon as you hit circulation is done, have a decision. I would say for your national registry purposes, there's no such thing really as stay and play. It's always load and go. Now, I have seen studies recently that did indicate, especially when it comes to cardiac arrest, there is a chance of survivability increase from staying and playing and actually not being interrupted. There's a chance. I can share that study with you. But at this point, we're going to close shop up for the day and answer any questions from any of the peanut gallery about what we've covered before we close up. And remember, we'll do this again on Thursday, and then next week we're going to delve into respiratory, cardiology, obstetrics, medical operations. But for tonight, that's going to be it. Any questions from the peanut gallery? All right. What about you, buddy? Nothing. Anybody at home got anything to add or say or anything like that? All right. So remember, this week you still have your final exam. I have it here. 120 questions of pure niceness. It should be quite enjoyable. So when you get a chance this week, come and get it. To pass on and go on to take your registry, I need at least a 70 out of you. There's no need in releasing you to go take the test if you're just going to fail it and waste your money, right? So pull out a 70 at least. If not, we'll give you another one. We'll remediate you, figure out what the weaknesses are, move on from there. So if that's going to be it, then guys, we'll call it a night. Y'all have a blessed evening, and we'll see you on Thursday, since it looks like the rest of exactly everybody else will be here then. All right, catch you later.